World Hunger Day approaches on Tuesday next week. The Global Report on Food Crisis 2023 reported a shocking increase in acute food insecurity, with over 282 million people in 59 countries and territories struggling to access adequate nutrition. So FoodForward South Africa says that South Africa is one of the few countries that does not have a food donation policy in place to secure surplus food. And this undermines the sustainability of our food systems at large. And with the escalating price of foodstuff, over 30 million people go hungry. Farmer Athi Khanqi as well says that communities do not have to go hungry, but can grow their own food by planting crops in their gardens to mitigate against this hunger crisis. And Plessis from FoodForward South Africa, as well as Athi Khanqi, joins us virtually to discuss a little bit further. Andy, good morning. Athi, good morning. Thank you for joining us on the SABC at this hour.
Hi, morning, Liesl. Thanks for having us.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right, Andy, let me start off with you at this point. We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you to the both of you at this hour. In fact, Andy, you know, initiatives like World Hunger Day really provide an opportunity at least to raise awareness and take concerted action to help end hunger. And so beyond awareness about food security or insecurity, what can be done to end hunger?
So in your introduction, you did mention that South Africa does not have any food donation regulations. And, you know, as we move towards 2030, and it's a race towards the Sustainable Development Goals to make sure that we reduce food loss and waste and that we end poverty by 2030. And yet, while other countries like Mexico, Paraguay, Italy, France, the United States, have all recently introduced or amended laws around food donations. South Africa does not have any regulations around food donations, which means over 10 million tons of our food across our food system is lost or wasted, according to the Center for Scientific and Industrial Research. And most of that food is edible, usable, surplus food that can be used, things that are out of specification for a retailer or manufacturer, or post-harvest surpluses where there are good surpluses, but they've over-harvested and there isn't a route to market. In the manufacturing side, where they overproduce to make sure that they have enough food, or there's poor forecasting or damaged goods. Those are the kind of goods that are still edible, good for human consumption. And we need to make sure that we are able to recover that food so that we can reduce the impact of food loss and waste on the environment, which is affecting climate. So that's a major step forward. And across our food system, we need to early identify where those surpluses are so that we can intercept it and use that to address the huge problem of food insecurity across South Africa.
Andy, thank you for setting that context. I actually wanted to understand why South Africa does not have a food donation policy. What are the reasons cited at this point? And, you know, in recovering surplus food, redistributing it as well to those who really do need the help, how is it going to lessen the problem across the value chain? Perhaps before we explore some of the other alternatives.
Absolutely. So we've been engaging with the Department of Health, who are the custodians of the Foodstuffs, Cosmetics and Disinfectants Act in South Africa. And we've been asking them to amend that act to allow for clauses around food donation, because the act does not accommodate for food donations. But within government, there's this hesitancy to amend acts because of the huge amount of work that is involved, and this could take quite a bit of time. So we have engaged with the Department of Health and we've insisted. However, the Department of Health have said their Foodstuffs Labeling and the Foodstuff and Labeling Act was in draft form, and we were able to make submissions to make those amendments. And the Department of Health has assured us that in that new labeling guidelines that will come out later this year, they are working on it, that they will accommodate for food donations. The second limiting factor is that the Consumer Protection Act talks about strict liability for donations. That means any farmer or manufacturer or retailer that wants to donate food to organizations like FoodForward SA, they could still be held liable even though they've donated the food to our organization. And even though we onward donated that food to an organization that's cooking or preparing meals or distributing food parcels, And so it's a limiting factor. With the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa, we did a survey amongst their members, and they've said that they are hesitant to donate large amounts of food because of this liability issue. And other countries have amended their liability legislation to accommodate for food donation. So what we've been doing is we're working with farmers, retailers, manufacturers, and they are donating their surplus food. But there's so much out there that aren't donating. And if they were just allowed that relaxed liability under certain conditions, they are able to donate that food if it's good for human consumption at the time they donate it, we could reduce this impact of food loss and waste and the effects of climate on our environment. 10% of our greenhouse gas emissions in South Africa are attributed to food loss and waste, and we can solve two birds with one stone.
But those are obviously valid arguments, both for and against, that policy, that food donation policy at this point. And speaking about working with farmers, I want to bring Athi now into the conversation. Athi, good morning. If you can hear me, I mean, you studied at Fort Cox College in the Eastern Cape Province. You studied animal production. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about your role in the value chain, how you came to learn about farming, and really what your speciality is as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you for having me. I'm a farmer from Eastern Cape in a small village of Etengen location. I started farming when I was at a young age because I grew up in a family who was practicing farming activities. So that thing, it was very influential for me to become who I am today, because I wanted to be a doctor of animals, which is a vet. But unfortunately, later I ended up studying animal production in Fort Cox College of Agriculture. So I started my farming journey using my stipend because I got an internship from Dr. Da. And then at that time, I didn't have money, so I used the stipend to start my business. So right now, I'm having 12 hectares, which I produce vegetables such as spinach, cabbages, and and sugar beans, and also having 2 sites of piggery, whereby I sell piglets and pork meat.
Athi, thank you for that. I actually wanted to, it seems like you've been blessed with some green fingers, and you're also, part of piggery production. Talk to us about the gaps that you witnessed on that front, and really, how you incorporated some of the teachings around what goes into piggery production in the Eastern Cape.
So I saw the gap that so many people were asking me on my Facebook page how I grow my pigs, why they are growing so fast. So I saw a gap on. I can start on teaching people on how to raise their pigs on a right way by firstly explaining the types of breed they can use, the vaccination programs and the feeding program they can use so that they have their own ways to grow their pigs, and then they can make a living out of it.
Andy, let me just go back to you on the back of what Athi's now just echoed, because beyond food wastage in South Africa, just looking at that food chain and some of the issues on that front, questions about whether the public should be utilizing nature's gifts, God-given land, to sustain themselves. I mean, from your vantage point, what should communities be doing for themselves despite mitigating against the issue of food wastage as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Andy, do continue. I'll come back to Athi after this. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. There are a few things communities can do. We are working with communities to set up food gardens in urban communities. And what we're doing is we're teaching people to grow their own food. So within communities, there are huge amounts of open, unused lands. And there are huge amounts of unemployed people. Our unemployment has just ticked up a bit now in the last month. And so what we are doing is we're teaching people that want to work. We're teaching them how to grow their own food. We provide them with a starter pack. And then we do two things that are quite unique. The first is We grow our own seedlings and we donate it onward to these organizations that are willing to grow their own food. And then secondly, we do a guaranteed buyback. So they must make sure they look after that seedling until it's a beautiful cabbage or there's a beautiful bunch of spinach, and we buy it back from them. And that way they can earn an income. And, for people that are unemployed and where there's unused land, this is a huge untapped opportunity across urban centers where underserved communities can take unused land and convert that into arable land that provides high yields and where people can earn an income. And from that, they can grow, they can even do things like preserves and that kind of thing and sell it not only in communities, but to organizations like FoodForward SA that will support their market and make sure that they sustain themselves into the future. So, we feel there's a huge untapped potential there still.
Well, speaking of unused land, Athi, I want to bring you back into the conversation because with the availability of land at our disposal, perhaps even in most people's backyards, why do you think people are still buying, spinach, herbs, everything in between? Most importantly, because you obviously are a farmer, how do you encourage people watching now to perhaps start to grow their own food, help themselves through what's at their disposal?
Okay. What I can say, people must stop being lazy because I can see that people are lazy. There's an open land. I also agree with Eddie. There's an open land, especially in rural areas, that is not used. So I encourage everyone to start their own produce, like starting on from the backyard and take those seedlings. Maybe you can. I can make an example. If you buy a sachet of a seed spinach, it's 60 rands each. And then you make your own bedding and make your own seedlings. On that sachet, you can get about 1,500 to close to 2,000 seedlings. And then you can start on your backyard transplanting those seedlings. And then in 2 months later, you will start eating them and then sell to the community.
Yeah.
No, these are valid points. And I know the conversation continues as well, obviously looking at the role of land and many conversations about that for the country at large. I'm going to leave the conversation there for the both of you. Andy, Athi, thank you for joining us at this hour. Andy du Plessis from FoodForward South Africa and Athi Khanqi. We're just focusing on some of the issues, the discussions, looking at the shocking increase in acute food insecurity at large. This is World Hunger Day approaches next Tuesday. We know that last year, the 2023 Global Report on Food Crisis recorded that over 282 million people in 59 countries and territories were struggling to access adequate nutrition. Thank you to the both of them for joining us on the SABC at this hour.